Good morning, everyone. It's time to go on the record.
It should be Iraqi boots on the ground solving this problem and not U.S. boots on the ground.
Respectfully, I disagree with the president.
Bay State Congressman speaking out against U.S. training troops heading to Iraq. We'll talk about this Democratic split.
Over 500,000 Bay Staters use marijuana, according to the government's own numbers.
Will legalizing pot be heading to a ballot near you? We've got a leader in the movement here today. And
the question, whether or not to legalize recreational marijuana use in Massachusetts, we have responses.
From WCPB Boston, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ed Harding, along with News Center 5's political reporter Janet Wu. Thank you for joining us on OTR today. Our guest this morning is working to legalize marijuana in Massachusetts. Matt Simon is the New England political director of the Marijuana Policy Project. He's a resident of Goffstown, New Hampshire. He successfully organized medical marijuana legislation in New Hampshire. It passed back in 2013. Right now, Simon is working on marijuana reforms in 5 states. He wants the legal marijuana to go before the Bay State voters in 2016 in the ballot question. What are the 5 states, Matt, that you're working on?
Well, for the ballot in November 2016, we have groups working in California,
right,
Nevada, Arizona, Massachusetts, and Maine.
Good. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So here in Massachusetts, you have we have a governor, an attorney general, a House Speaker, and even the Senate president unhappy with your ballot question. How do you jump that sort of political hurdle?
Well, it's frustrating to hear that they're upset about a ballot question they haven't had an opportunity to read yet. We have a drafting committee that's working very hard on this, trying to get input from around the state, trying to understand what people's concerns are so that we can put together a good initiative that will go to the ballot in November 2016. I just ask that they reserve judgment until they read it, and we look forward to hearing their input.
Well, 3 of them say specifically they are against legalizing marijuana, and 1 of them says they don't like the idea of making laws through the ballot initiative, which of course is not within your jurisdiction. So how do you change their minds as long as you know, because after all, their input is important in this issue?
Absolutely, and I think the whole state of Massachusetts will be having a robust debate about these issues, and I think we'll get into the nitty-gritty of what really is happening in Colorado and Washington. How do we separate fact from fiction? And by November 2016, I think voters will be much more informed, and I think they'll overwhelmingly end up supporting this.
Well, Janet mentioned a list of legislators that might object to it, or there might be a hurdle. The biggest hurdle in all might be the Attorney General, Maura Healey. She has to approve the wording for your question again on the ballot. Any fears that her political views might thwart the effort?
I will cross that bridge when we get to it, but you know, these were certainly issues in 2008 when a decriminalization initiative was being considered, and in 2012 when a medical marijuana initiative was considered, and in both of those cases language did end up going to the ballot and did end up getting approved by more than 60% of voters, so we're confident.
Your biggest image problem, however, may be the mayor of Boston, Marty Walsh. He's well known to be a leader in the addiction recovery community. What's your message to him specifically?
I would just encourage Mayor Walsh to step back a little bit and put emotion aside and start looking at the actual facts and evidence from Colorado. It's not as simple as should we be frowning on marijuana use or should we be celebrating marijuana use. What we're talking about doing is taking an incredibly lucrative multi-billion-dollar market, taking it away from gangs and cartels and giving it to regulated businesses. We're talking about creating thousands of jobs in the Bay State, bringing in new tax revenues, and displacing a criminal market that is a bigger problem. Marijuana is here to stay. People are going to be using marijuana regardless of what we do. Do we want them to buy it from a regulated market, or do we want to continue to benefit criminals?
We talked about the 5 states that you're going to work on to try to get it legalized. Take a look at this. There are 4 states that already have legalized marijuana, and they are Alaska, the great state of Alaska, Oregon. It is legal in Oregon. It's legal in Colorado, and it's legal in Washington. The District of Columbia also has okayed small amounts of pot for what's called recreational use. At this point, let me ask you, define recreational use. What is, it's a term that's thrown around. What is recreational use?
It's actually a term I don't use. I use the term non-medical or the term adult use. We don't refer to recreational bourbon or recreational cigars. The plant is the plant. Some people are using it for purely medical reasons. Other people are using it for things like insomnia, anxiety, depression. A lot of people are using it for the same reason people use alcohol.
Right.
A long day of work, come home, should I relax with a beer or with marijuana? We argue that marijuana is objectively safer than alcohol. People should be able to make that choice.
So why is it so important to legalize marijuana in Massachusetts, because this is where we live?
Well, I think people look back historically and think of alcohol prohibition. That is the closest analogy. People understand that prohibition for alcohol didn't work. A few people quit drinking, but most people kept drinking. And all of the other problems, violence, crime, cartels of that day getting rich, that's where we are with marijuana today, is what we would argue. We can't stop people from using marijuana. We can scrap prohibition, which is not an effective policy, and move towards regulation.
You talk about how taxpayers could benefit from legalizing marijuana. What do you propose would be a good tax to be put, at least initially, on marijuana if it's legalized in Massachusetts?
That's one of the questions that our ballot, that our drafting committee's talking about, and there is an issue if you were to, quote unquote, tax the hell out of it, which some people suggest. That would risk keeping the black market intact if marijuana is $500 an ounce at a store.
So what's appropriate? 5%, 4%, 10%, 15%?
I'm not prepared to give you a firm answer just yet, Janet, but our initiative language will be public by August at the latest.
And you'll have a percentage there on the tax?
Absolutely.
What have we learned in Colorado and in the states where it is legal? What have we learned? Has it dispelled any theories that might resolve the issue that viewers are looking at right now?
I think the biggest thing we've learned is mainly that the sky has not fallen. The fears that a lot of people have not come to fruition. People spent about $700 million on marijuana at legal businesses last year in Colorado, and the problems associated with that were minuscule, bearing out what we've said all along, that marijuana is less harmful than alcohol, and that prohibition causes more problems than marijuana itself.
All right, are you ready for the OTR pop quiz?
I think so.
What do you mean you think so? Question one. Bill Clinton claimed that he didn't inhale. Name the contemporary American president who admitted smoking pot and said, "I inhale frequently." That was the point.
President Barack Obama.
As a matter of policy, the president says he supports decriminalizing but not legalizing marijuana, but you're right. That is the man who said that very quote we just read. Question two, a number of founding fathers used cannabis for medical purposes. What was the crop they grew on their plantations?
That would be hemp.
You're 2 for 2, man. You're nailing it right out of the park.
Give me a hard one, Ed.
You okay? Well, we're going to take a break. We'll find a hard one, and we'll give it to Matt Simon. Stay with us.